The voicemail wasn't playing right. There was a delay, a half second of static, and then I heard her breathing. Not crying, not talking. Just breathing, short, uneven, like she was trying very hard not to make a sound. I was standing in the rental car lot at Pearson. I'd just landed from Vancouver. A 3-hour flight, a work conference I hadn't wanted to go to in the first place, and I was already thinking about the drive home to Barrie, about whether my daughter had eaten dinner, about the leftover butter chicken in the fridge. Normal things, tired dad things. Then I pressed play again. Dad. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Dad, if you can hear this, I found Uncle Perry's old phone in the storage room. The one Aunt Shelley said got thrown out. I don't have much time. They took mine 2 days ago. I don't know why I'm still here. I just need you to come home. Please. Dad, please come home. And then the voicemail ended. 14 seconds. I know because I counted them later, when I was sitting in a parking spot I didn't remember pulling into, listening to it for the 5th time. My daughter is 12 years old. Her name is Cora. She was supposed to be with my sister-in-law. Let me back up, because none of this makes sense without the context, and I need you to understand how we got there. How I, a reasonably attentive father, ended up in a car park at the country's busiest airport listening to my child beg for help through a burner phone she'd found hidden in a storage room. My wife passed away 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in February, gone by September. That's how fast it went. 1 minute we were talking about renovating the kitchen. The next, I was learning what palliative care meant and trying to explain to a 9-year-old why Mummy was sleeping so much. Her name was Sandra. She was 41 years old. She made the best butter tarts in Simcoe County, and she loved Neil Young, and she died on a Tuesday morning with me holding her left hand, and Cora drawing pictures of horses in the waiting room, because she was too young to be in the room and I didn't know how to tell her to come in. After Sandra passed, her family, particularly her sister Shelley and Shelley's husband Perry, made a point of staying close, which I appreciated genuinely. Cora adored them. Shelley was the fun aunt, the one who took her skating at the Collingwood rink and let her stay up past 10 watching movies. Perry ran a landscaping business, coached minor hockey, had 2 yellow labs named after hockey players. He seemed like a good man. I leaned on them more than I should have, I know that now. But I was working full-time and grieving and trying to parent a child who had also lost her mother, and sometimes that meant saying yes when Shelley offered to take Cora for a weekend. Sometimes it meant longer. A week over March break. 10 days in the summer when Cora said she wanted to stay and Shelley said they'd love to have her. I told myself it was good for Cora to be around Sandra's family, that it kept Sandra's memory alive. That was partly true and partly an excuse. The conference in Vancouver had been planned for 6 weeks, 4 days. I'd arranged for Cora to stay with Shelley and Perry at their place in Wasaga Beach. Cora seemed fine with it. A little quiet the week before, but I chalked that up to school stress. She was in grade 7. There's always something. I called every night. The first 2 nights Cora answered and we talked. She sounded okay. A little flat maybe, but okay. The 3rd night Shelley answered and said Cora was already asleep, which was unusual because Cora is a night owl, always has been, but I didn't push it. The 4th night, the last night before I flew home, nobody answered at all. I texted Shelley. She replied 40 minutes later, all good. She's fine. Drive safe tomorrow. I didn't sleep well that night. I don't know what made me check my voicemail when I landed. I never check voicemail. Nobody under 60 checks voicemail anymore. But I had a missed call from a number I didn't recognize, a 705 area code, Georgian Bay region. And something made me press play 14 seconds. Dad, please come home. I called the number back immediately. It rang 11 times, no answer. I called Shelley's cell, it went to voicemail. I called Perry's cell. Same. I called their home line and it rang and rang and rang. I sat in that parking spot and I thought about what to do. My hands were not steady. I called 911. I know some people hesitate to do that. They don't want to overreact. They don't want to seem dramatic. They think, well, maybe there's an explanation. Maybe I'm missing something. I didn't think any of those things. I heard my daughter's voice on that message and I called 911. The dispatcher was calm and patient in the way that people in that job have to be. She asked me a series of questions. What was the address? I gave her the address in Wasaga Beach. How old was my daughter? 12. When had I last confirmed she was safe? 2 nights ago. Was there reason to believe she was in immediate danger? I played her the voicemail over the phone. Through the speaker, Cora's voice filled the rental car. I don't have much time. They took mine 2 days ago. There was a brief silence on the line. Sir, the dispatcher said, I'm going to stay on with you. I'm dispatching officers to that address right now. I thanked her. I think I thanked her. Then I put the car in reverse and started driving north. Barrie to Wasaga Beach is about 40 minutes under normal circumstances. I did it in 31. I'm not proud of that. I'm also not apologizing for it. The whole drive I kept playing the message in my head. They took mine 2 days ago. 2 days. For 2 days my daughter had been without her phone and I hadn't known. For 2 days she'd been trying to find a way to reach me. She'd found Perry's old Samsung in a storage room. One Shelley had apparently told everyone was thrown out, and she'd used it to call me. 12 years old, my kid. I saw the OPP cruiser before I saw the house, then another one, then an ambulance, lights on but no siren. I parked half on the curb. I was running before the car was fully stopped, and an officer stepped in front of me. Young guy, couldn't have been more than 26, and said, "Sir, I need you to stop. My daughter is in there," I said. "I'm her father. I'm the one who called, sir, I understand. Can you tell me your name?" "Marcus Webb. My daughter is Cora Webb. She's 12. Where is she?" He put a hand on my shoulder. Not aggressive, just firm. "Mr. Webb, your daughter has been located. She's receiving care right now. She's alive. She's alive." I don't know why he said it that way, with that particular emphasis, until later. At the time, I just needed to see her. They let me through after another minute. A paramedic was kneeling beside Cora on the front lawn. She was wrapped in a silver emergency blanket, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was so small. She looked smaller than I remembered from 4 days ago, which didn't make sense, and then it did. "Cora." My voice came out wrong. Too high. "Cora, I'm here." She looked up and her face did something I won't ever forget. It crumpled and then it steadied, and then she was crying and saying, "Dad," and I had my arms around her, and for a moment that was all there was. She was cold. Even through the blanket, she was cold. Later, much later, I found out they'd found her in the storage room at the back of the property. A converted garden shed, insulated, with a bolt lock on the outside. There was a sleeping bag in there, a case of water bottles, and a bag of granola bars. Enough to not be neglect in the most clinical sense of the word. Enough that someone had thought about it, planned it, made it look like minimum care while ensuring maximum control. She'd been in there for 4 days, the entire time I was in Vancouver. In the days that followed, while Cora was assessed at Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre in Barrie, hydrated, malnourished, emotionally traumatized, but with no physical injuries beyond some bruising on her wrists from where she'd tried to force the bolt. The OPP and the Children's Aid Society began putting together what had happened. Shelley had locked Cora in the storage room on the first night. Apparently there had been an argument. Cora had asked to call me and Shelley had said no, and when Cora pushed back, Shelley had taken her phone and put her in the shed. This is where it gets complicated and where I have spent the subsequent months trying to understand people I thought I knew. Perry had known. Not from the beginning, the investigators believed, but from the second night. He had not intervened. He had gone to work, come home, eaten dinner, and gone to bed while my daughter slept in a garden shed in the cold Ontario spring. When I asked Cora, gently, what had happened, what had made Shelley lock her in, she said it was because she'd told Shelley she missed her mum, that she'd been talking about Sandra, telling Shelley a memory she had of making Christmas cookies with her mum, and Shelley had gone very quiet and then very angry and said that Cora needed to stop living in the past. That was the argument. That was what landed my daughter in a storage shed for 4 days. I don't have a clean way to explain what I felt when I heard that. Grief and rage are not emotions that sit well together. They don't balance each other out. They amplify each other. There are things about this that don't settle easily, and I want to be honest about them. The first is the timeline. Cora had been in that shed for 4 days. The OPP had dispatched immediately when I called. But there are procedures, wellness checks, property access, confirming jurisdiction, and Shelley had answered the door when officers first arrived that first evening, hours before I landed, and told them Cora was at a friend's house. They had no immediate grounds to contradict her. It wasn't until I called again from the road, increasingly frantic, that a second unit went back with more authority, and Shelley cracked within about 20 minutes of sustained questioning. I have complicated feelings about that delay. I understand procedurally why it happened. I do not feel at peace with it. The second is my own guilt. I was her father. I called every night and then I didn't, and I told myself a text from my sister-in-law at 10 p.m. was enough. I have gone over every decision of those 4 days probably 400 times since, looking for the moment I should have known. I don't know that there was one clear moment. I think there were a dozen small ones, and I chose to interpret each of them charitably, the way you do with family. The way you do when you're tired and grieving and trying to hold your life together with both hands. I'm not excusing myself, I'm explaining. There's a difference, and I try to remember that. Shelley was charged with forcible confinement of a minor and criminal negligence. Perry was charged as a party to the offense for failing to intervene and actively concealing the situation from police. The Crown pursued both charges seriously. At trial, and there was a trial, neither of them took a plea. The defense tried to argue that the storage room had been adequately provisioned and that Shelley had genuinely believed she was managing a difficult behavioral situation, that Cora was a child prone to exaggeration, that the shed was insulated and warm, and that the time away was meant to be a cooling-off period. I was in that courtroom for every day of testimony. I heard a lawyer use the words cooling off period to describe locking a 12-year-old girl in a converted garden shed in April in Ontario. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. Shelley was convicted on both counts. She received a sentence of 6 years. Perry, on the lesser charge, received 3 years. Under the terms of both sentences, they are prohibited from contact with anyone under 18 for a period of 10 years following their release. There are people, including, I learned, at least one mutual acquaintance of ours, who felt that I had been too aggressive in pursuing the charges. That family matters should be handled within the family. That Shelley had been struggling with her own grief over Sandra's death, and that context should have been considered. I want to address that directly. Sandra was my wife. She was Cora's mother. If Shelley's grief over losing her sister led her to lock her 12-year-old niece in a shed for expressing that same grief, then Shelley's grief was not a mitigating factor. It was the mechanism of the harm. Those are not the same thing. I want to tell you what happened after, because the after matters. Cora spent 6 weeks seeing a therapist at the health center, a woman who specialized in pediatric trauma and who I credit, genuinely, with helping Cora begin to process what had happened without letting it calcify into something permanent and defining. Therapy is not a magic fix, but it gave Cora a language for what she'd experienced, and it gave me a framework for how to support her without making her feel like she was broken. She struggled with small spaces for a while. The school had a storage closet near her classroom, and for the first few months back, she'd go the long way around the hall to avoid it. She didn't want to talk about that, and I didn't push. Some things you work around quietly, and that's okay. She also, slowly, started talking about her mom again, which is what she'd been doing when this all began. Making Christmas cookies, a memory of her mother. My daughter had been punished for grieving, and she'd kept grieving anyway, in whatever space she could find. That's my kid. That's exactly my kid. There were legal proceedings related to guardianship as well. I had never formally documented my custody arrangement with Shelley. It had always been informal, family to family, and in the aftermath, my lawyer helped me ensure that no one outside of a short and specific list of adults could have overnight responsibility for Cora without my written consent. It's a document I wish I'd had years earlier. I'd tell any single parent reading this, make the document. It feels excessive until it doesn't. I sold the house in Barrie eventually. Too many layers of memory in it, some good and some not. Cora and I moved to Collingwood, which she'd always loved, the ski hills, the Georgian Bay, and started over in a smaller place that felt like ours and only ours. She's 15 now. She's doing well. She plays defense for her school hockey team, and she has 3 close friends she's known since grade 6. And she makes butter tarts at Christmas because Sandra's recipe is written in her grandmother's handwriting on a card that we've laminated and keep in the kitchen drawer. She doesn't talk about the shed often. When she does, she calls it that situation matter-of-factly, the way teenagers refer to difficult things when they've processed them enough to lose the rawness. Once, about a year ago, she said to me, "Dad, I knew you'd come. I just didn't know how long it would take." I didn't know what to say to that. I'm not sure there's anything to say. She knew I'd come. She found a phone, and she called me. 12 years old. I'm sharing this because people ask me, when they find out what happened, what the lesson is, what you're supposed to take from something like this. I used to not have a good answer. I'd say something about trusting your instincts, about not letting exhaustion override your judgment, and that's all true as far as it goes. But it's also incomplete. The actual lesson, the one that stays with me, the one I think about when I watch Cora pull on her skates or reach for that laminated recipe card, is simpler than that. She told me the truth when she finally had the means to tell it. She hadn't exaggerated. She hadn't performed distress. She'd found a way in a locked room to reach her father and tell him exactly what was happening in plain, clear 12-year-old language. "Dad, I don't have much time. Please come home." Before all of this, I thought I was a parent who listened to his child. I think most parents believe that about themselves. After all of this, I think there's a difference between listening and believing, and that gap is where a lot of damage lives. Listen to your children, and when they tell you something is wrong, believe them. Before you have the full picture, before you've confirmed the details. Before family loyalty or social comfort or the exhaustion of single parenting has time to offer you a more palatable explanation, believe them first. The drive north from the airport takes 40 minutes. I did it in 31, and I would do it in 20 if I had to, and I would do it again without hesitation, and I would do it every time. That's the whole story.